So the economic survey, actually, the preface itself starts with the sea change or shift with respect to how India can increase the growth and what are the problems with respect to economic growth right now. And right now, household savings are coming down. This is what the data shows. And people are less interested in financial savings, and they believe that probably gold will give me better returns. There will be a support system ensured by the banks or the lenders. They will pay the MSME, and the settlement will be done between these companies and the bank. That is why it is under RBI. So globalization is not about movement of only goods and services. It involves movement of capital. It also involves movement of human capital. Movement of human capital, movement of capital, as well as movement of goods and services. So government's logistics policy primarily focuses on three things: multi-modal logistic parks, warehouses, and cold storage. Then another problem in India is with respect to transportation. So economic survey also talks about transportation. It says when we talk about transportation, in India's case, our transportation is skewed with respect to road. National Infrastructure Pipeline, 111 lakh crores on building infrastructure. Government also says in this 111 lakh crores, 6 lakh crore we will raise through asset monetization. Okay, now see, I'll take 5 minutes to talk about what has to be done when we are reading economic survey. So there are two things which we will keep in mind when we are reading any chapter. One is how will I use it for mains, first thing. Second is for prelims, which are the areas which are important. Okay, so why are we reading economic survey? We are reading it so that one, we understand the overview of Indian economy completely. First thing. Second is how will I use it when it comes to mains with respect to differentiation of my answer. Okay, so that is the main objective. And how did government evolve its policies from 2018, and how is that different from what government is looking at in this economic survey? Okay, there is a sea change with respect to our policy focus. The way we were talking about focusing on investment for increasing growth in 2018, Madam is now talking about domestic consumption. So the economic survey, actually, the preface itself starts with the sea change or shift with respect to how India can increase the growth and what are the problems with respect to economic growth right now. So this is one important observation. That means any growth related question in UPSC. So there were many growth related questions. Earlier the question was something like savings important factor for growth. What are the other things other than savings which can affect economic growth? This was one mains question that was asked in 2019. Okay, so, or there was discussions on investment-led growth model or linking labor productivity with respect to economic growth. There was a question that India's growth process or India was able to achieve economic growth through labor productivity. So come up with growth models which will not compromise on labor productivity. So that means linking labor productivity with economic growth was another area. So is there any discussion of labor productivity and growth in the economic survey right now? Okay, so these are the things which you have to observe. So one is linking with UPSC syllabus, which you already know, observing trends, especially for prelims. Okay, so this comes into when certain topics like agriculture, etc., and even economic growth as well as per capita incomes. 5 years, are they increasing, decreasing, etc. So this is something like observing charts. Then economic growth and inclusive growth. Always UPSC exam mains is primarily focused on these two things. So that is the reason anywhere, any point I can pick up which I can use for inclusiveness or economic growth should be your criteria. Then sectors and their contribution. This is primary, secondary, tertiary. Different schemes in news and new terms and relevance. Okay, so for mains, what are the things which I will look into when we are reading economic survey? So here we can see one is linking with syllabus, that is common. Focus on economic growth and inclusive growth, that is common. Data chart, very important. From where can I pick up some charts which will add value to my answer? So economic survey is a very good source for improving my answer, especially with respect to drawing flow charts. This is what I wanted to mention. Value addition for grabbing one additional mark per question. So value addition is basically adding value by maybe a flow chart or a box approach or giving some examples, or I'm writing as mentioned in economic survey, there was a focus on deregulation. Okay, so like this. Then block diagrams, bar charts, updating your mains notes using economic survey. So this is very important. Once you have made your notes, it has to be updated with respect to economic survey. So it can be with respect to introductions, or it can be with respect to some data, especially with respect to few topics, which I will talk about later. Okay, and relevance with previous policies of the government. That is also very important. Is that okay? So here, when we look at this chapter, we will put it as all about business reforms, industry, and these areas. Okay, so the relevance, I will put it as mains exam 70 and prelims 30 to 40%. It ranges between 60-40. Okay, and previous year questions, just for your understanding, faster economic growth requires increased share of manufacturing sector, particularly MSMEs. Comment on the present policies of government in this regard. There is a very detailed discussion on MSMEs in this chapter, which I can use it in the form of way forward, as well as writing some points with respect to micro, small, and medium enterprises. Very, very important. Okay. There was a prelims question with respect to coal sector, okay, earlier. Okay, I'll show you the questions also. Or there were some questions on IIP. IIP is Index of Industrial Production. Okay, so these things, that is a factual question that was asked with respect to IIP. Industrial growth rate has lagged behind in the overall growth of GDP in the post-reform period. Give reasons. How far the recent changes in industrial policy are capable of increasing the industrial growth. So here, if you check these topics, there is a direct focus on manufacturing sector. Okay, so the government is very clear that China is moving at a very fast pace, and that will become a threat for economic growth. And from integration, that is from globalization, we are more fragmented now. More fragmented means, if I have to, GDP is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX, right? That formula I think everybody knows. So in 2018, Madam was talking about I and NX. In 2018, Madam focus was on I. I is what? Investment and net exports. Okay, so I'll just show you what. So in 2018, the focus was on I and NX. Anyway, I'll show you once we start discussing. Okay, so but right now the focus is on which aspect? Now the focus is on C. That is clearly visible. And the chapters explain why are we focusing on C. The chapters clearly explain why is that India has to focus on C, domestic consumption, and all the tax reforms which you see up to 12 lakhs and all that is also basically because you have to focus on C, and the global environment is not such that you can focus on I and X. I think you're getting my point. You can't focus much on investment. Of course, you can focus on investment, but there are problems with respect to FDI investments coming into India. This is a problem right now. And trade barriers clearly visible. Okay, so therefore, there is a focus that there is a shift with respect to focus. I hope it is clear, right? Now, there are also some prelims questions like this, okay, which were asked earlier. So these are also questions which we can, of course, we can answer this question without reading economic survey also. But just I'm showing you that this is industry is also one area where questions keep coming. Is that clear? Okay. So when we talk about this particular topic, this topic mainly focuses on global background and changing dynamics right now. Okay, then what are the domestic developments here in India? Importance of MSME and states' performance and global environment. Okay, so this is the structure of the topic basically. The topic focuses on these four aspects. These are some trends which we observe. Of course, you would have seen these trends, discussed these trends already. So why these trends are important? These trends are important for prelims. Later on, you can take the PPT. So here, if you look at GDP growth estimations, the economic survey estimates at what rate. Okay, so now government is talking about 6.4%, and there is an estimation that it will be between 6.3 to 6.8. Is that okay? So here, if you make an observation here, these are some estimates, and then food grain production, forex reserves, capital expenditure, etc. So this is some data to give a hold of where is India right now with respect to some of the aspects, including the industrial production or growth in IIP. IIP is what? Index of industrial production. Okay.
Online classes offer convenience, but serious aspirants know that UPSC success demands structure, focus, and personal support, found only in physical classrooms. Classroom learning enables real-time interaction, ensuring no question goes unanswered. This immediate feedback fosters a deeper understanding and builds confidence. After-class interactions with faculty turns doubts into discussions and guidance into growth. These personal moments are the stepping stones to your UPSC success. Peer discussions in classrooms foster collaboration, critical thinking, and camaraderie, qualities essential for UPSC success. Classroom tests mirrors the intensity of the UPSC exam with real-time supervision and in-depth evaluations. Every test becomes a learning experience. Mock interviews in classrooms recreate the pressure of UPSC interviews. With constructive feedback, aspirants refine their responses and build confidence for the real test. A structured environment keeps you disciplined and focused. With fixed schedules and personal accountability, classrooms ensure you stay on track. Faculty members regularly interact with their peers, ensuring students get diverse perspectives on complex subjects. This enriches the learning process and keeps the curriculum dynamic and relevant. Classrooms don't just teach, they inspire. Step into the world with confidence and turn dreams into milestones.
Now, so when we look at a global background, one important observation is the high income countries are slowly losing their ground, and that is captured by China. And that is obviously, of course, we say that India is also is a contender, but that's not the case. What we clearly observe is there is pure domination of China, which is clearly visible. Now, this is the data performance of countries in manufacturing sector. One important observation is every economy has to move from primary to secondary and then secondary to tertiary. Unlike India, where we have straight away jumped from primary to tertiary sector, that is something like we have neglected our secondary sector. We face a problem of muted manufacturing. That is, manufacturing contribution to GDP is still around 17%. In the last 20 years also, it is in that particular range of 15 to 16% only. So this is one big problem which we are facing right now. And that is also clearly explained in the economic survey. That is called as muted manufacturing. So one of the important aspects which we have to focus is increasing the contribution of manufacturing to GDP. This is what the economic survey also clearly talks about. Now here if we observe, this is about the performance of some countries in manufacturing sector. Okay, so here if we have to observe China, China's contribution, the index shows China's contribution to manufacturing is high, and you can observe India. Okay, and if you see industry value added percent for 2023, okay, so India is less, and when we look at lower middle income countries, upper middle income countries, etc. India is a lower middle income country. China is an upper middle income country. So there is a discussion that we might get into middle income trap. And unless and until we strengthen our manufacturing, India will not move to upper middle income and subsequently to higher income country. So this is the discussion here. This chart clearly shows that. So India's share, when we look at India's share in manufacturing, global share in global manufacturing is 2.8% compared to China's 28%. This is some data which shows that India's participation in the global manufacturing is very limited. hardly 2.8% compared to China's 28.8%. This data is very important while writing answers. Global manufacturing is also facing challenges. So the scenario right now is, it's not just about India. Overall manufacturing sector also there is trouble due to changing dynamics. This is what the survey says. Manufacturing output rose from 0.4% in quarter 3, rose around like 0.4% compared to 1% in the previous quarter. That means you observe that globally also the manufacturing growth has slowed down. So that is one of the important observations. That means the global background shows that the overall manufacturing is slowing down. Already India's has a problem of muted manufacturing. That is 17% of GDP is only coming from manufacturing. Third important observation here is Chinese contribution to the global manufacturing is almost like 28%. And China is a upper middle income country. India is a lower middle income country. So to move up the ladder, one is investment, two infusion, and three innovation. There are three I's for moving from middle income country to a upper income, high income country. India is in lower middle income, around 2,500. Okay, so we have to move to higher income country. Become a higher income country, it becomes difficult unless and until you focus on three I's. So of course the economic survey does not talk much about innovation. Of course they talk about R&D, research and development and other things. So economic survey is very clear that India's spending on research and development is very limited. That is the area of innovation. Infusion is countries are signing some technological agreements so that initially they will get the technology from other countries. Then they will develop the ecosystem. So the economic survey talks about how do we develop ecosystem so that innovation would be strengthened. That means it talks about patents, how approvals of patents should be at a faster pace, etc. What has to be done with respect to innovation, spending into research and development. All that is also discussed in the economic survey. I hope it is clear. Now here when we talk about industrial sector, so industrial sector primarily has four subsectors. That is mining and quarrying, electricity, gas, water supply, manufacturing and construction. That is clearly visible here. Mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, gas, construction, and all that. These four put together is my industry. I hope it is clear. So now the whole logic here is the expectation is more jobs should get created where? Manufacturing, not in construction. But the dominance in last 5 to 10 years is more jobs started getting created in the construction sector. But the problem of jobs that are getting created in the construction sector are casual jobs. They are not with any social security. Expansion of urbanization, etc., is leading to more jobs in construction in my secondary sector rather than manufacturing. And most of the jobs in construction sector are casual jobs without social security. So this is one problem. One is creation of jobs. Second is what kind of jobs are we creating? If construction is the major entity, then there is a trouble. Now this is basically average annual growth of industry 2020 to 2024 data. Okay, and you are comparing it with 2025. Okay, the blue one is 2025. 2020 to 24, the green one, 2025, the blue one. So if you observe the overall industry here, okay, so there is an expectation that industrial growth rate would be definitely better than last 4 years average. Industrial growth rate would be better than last 4 years average. This is what we can comment from this graph. But at the same time, the survey also explains that there is a fall with respect to the growth in the second quarter of 2025. Okay, so the reason for this fall, it has given explanation that mining, there was a problem with respect to mining. There was a slowdown with respect to mining industry. And there was also slowdown with respect to construction. So mining and construction have slowed down, and that is one of the reasons for the quarterly growth to reduce. You can see this graph. So here IIP is one index. IIP is a volume index. Okay, IIP is a volume index. It talks about how good our industrial output is. That is what is indicated by this index called IIP, which is given by MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Okay, so that is one important observation. Industrial growth declined due to trade competition and industrial policies of other countries. So here the whole discussion goes like, why is it that the industrial growth has come down? Primarily, it says the trade policies of other countries. So there is a sea shift with respect to globalization, moving away from globalization. There is a lot of fragmentation, which is called as geoeconomic fragmentation right now. So what is the meaning of fragmentation here? You're closing down, or you'll do only trade with your alliances based on certain intentions. So you're moving away from globalization or free trade concept rather than you're closing down and trying to protect your domestic markets, or you're signing some regional agreements. So we call it as friend shoring. Okay, so there may not be easy flow of capital investment into India also, or some other countries also, as it used to happen earlier. This is what is the logic. I hope it is clear. Okay. Now, of course, this was a question that was asked with respect to 8 core industries. Okay, so 8 core industries, there is a discussion about these 8 core industries in this chapter. Okay, so cement, steel. So there was a question. The question was index of 8 core industries, which one of the following has been given the highest weight? This was a prelims question. Got the point, right? So index of 8 core industries, the highest weight is given to refinery products. So refinery products is almost like 28% weight. Okay, so this was the previous question that they have asked, 28% weight. But here, of course, in the options, he has not given refinery. In the options, he has not given refinery. So here, if you see refinery 28%, electricity 19%. Okay, so you see the options: coal, electricity, fertilizer, steel. Fertilizer has the least number here, and in these options, it is electricity. So this was a prelims question, just to tell you that there can be some random prelims question that can come up on weights, and this is what is discussed, how these sectors are performing. That is how the question was. I hope it is clear. So, and these 8 core industries account to 40% of my IIP. IIP index is there. So, index of industrial production, these 8 core industries account to almost 40% of IIP. IIP index of industrial production. Is that okay? I think till here there is nothing like a complication. It is purely factual. Most of the thing is factual here. Now the economic surveys moves ahead and discusses different industries and how they were performing, etc. So here in this chapter, what they do is they start discussing on different industries. So one is the cement industry. So sometimes there are some factual questions that keep coming, and in prelims basically. So here you can see India is the second largest cement producer in the world after China, and the states which are dominating with respect to cement production are Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka. So these are some facts which are important as far as the cement production is concerned. Okay, so here this data, it's talking about which states are leading with respect to cement, etc. Is that okay? Of course, cement has some problems, the industry has some problems. Okay, so one, cement has been delicensed in 1991. Delicensed in 1991. Okay, India is the second largest producer after China. These are facts, okay, which can come up. There was a question on coal sector. That coal sector was nationalized during Indira Gandhi Madam period. And there was another statement which says, coal sector, India does not import any coal. This was the previous question. Okay, India imports coal because India does not have quality coal. Okay, so we don't have the anthracite, bituminous, limited amount. So therefore, we import coal from outside. So there was a prelims question that was asked earlier related to this. I hope it is clear, right? So if you look at this second largest producer, and again, this is data which talks about the which state has maximum, etc. Okay, then there is a discussion about electronics industry in the economic survey. So electronic industry, if I look at, there is a robust production trends which you see with respect to electronic industry. And the graph shows that there is a increase with respect to the production of electronics in the last few years. That is what I'll observe. I'm observing that there is a trend where the production is increasing. But do we import is the question. Okay, so do we import? Yes, we import. If you can observe the orange one here. Okay, so 20, 21, 22, 23 and 24. So are we importing? Yes. And is the production increasing? Yes. Is this clear? So this is how the question can come up. So that is what I said. You have to observe some graphs. You need not remember the numbers, but at least you should know. So domestic production 1.9 lakh crore to 9.5 lakh crore. That is the increase which we see. So it is 9.5 lakh crore. This graph is showing that. Okay, so 2024, the production. Okay, so here in 2020, and then over a period of time, slowly we have increased it to 9.5 lakh crore. This is what is understanding from this graph. Okay, so one area where the economic survey there is a focus here is the PLI scheme has been introduced in 14 key sectors, including electronics. The reason for that increase in production is also because of the production linked incentive program. Okay, so that is what the economic survey is saying. We were able to increase electronics production because of coming up with PLI. And for electronic sector, we had a different role to play. We had a different kind of approach for electronic sector. So in the electronic sector, PLI aims to scale up assembly processes to encourage the existing domestic manufacturing ecosystems. So the results are evident in financial year 15, mobile phone imports accounted for 78% of the market in value terms. But in 23, this figure dropped to just 4%. The number of imports which we were doing with respect to the mobile phones has drastically decreased from 78% to almost like 4%. Are you able to get this? So this is what the data is talking about. This shows the success of PLI scheme in terms of reducing import of mobiles, obviously. So this is what. And there was a news also, Apple phones are manufactured, we are exporting them to other countries, etc. So we can say that PLI scheme to some extent definitely has helped in this aspect. These are factual. There's nothing like mains area. So mains question, so here, of course, prelims question can come up from certain sectors which are in news. Okay, so one is electronics to some extent, yes. Okay, and then textiles, there is this aspect called as technical textiles in news. Okay, so technical textiles are those textiles which are not used for their aesthetic value. They have a certain purpose to be filled. For example, sports or bulletproof jackets. Okay, so the fire jackets, etc. So these are called as technical textiles. So this is continuously in news. So you should know India is the 5th largest market with respect to these kind of textiles. Okay, these can be factual statements here. Now, for India is a net exporter of technical textiles. Net exporter of technical textiles. So this is a statement which can come up in exam from economic survey. And India's technical textile industry is 5th largest. India's technical textile industry is 5th largest. So after reading all those pages, these are the two important statements which might come up, and technical textile looks important. The textile industry is a major employment generator. Why is textile industry so important? There was a lot of discussion. India followed a capital intensive growth model earlier, 1960s, etc. And for every 1 rupee spent on textile will create 300 more jobs for the same 1 rupee spent on steel. So textile industries benefit. One, it is labor intensive. So India is a leading producer of jute and ranks second globally in cotton, silk and man-made fiber. These are some facts. India is a leading producer of jute and ranks second globally in cotton, silk. India is the 6th largest exporter of textiles and apparel and has a share of about 4% of the global trade in this segment. So this is what the data talks about. Is this clear, everybody? So here, share of components in Indian textile exports. This is a share of component. Is it visible? Is that okay? Share of components in India's textile exports, you find which one is maximum? Ready-made garments followed by cotton textiles. This is what the chart says. You will not mug up. You can just see that the chart says ready-made garments followed by cotton textiles. Textiles and apparels, including handicrafts, if you see import and export, when we look at, okay, so there is a jump which we see. Okay, so here when we look at the textiles and apparels, including handicrafts. So this is what is the observation here. Okay, so India is world's second largest clothing manufacturer and one of the top 5 exporting nations. Okay. Clear till there? Okay, so another important aspect which the economic survey talks about is, as I mentioned, if you have to move from the middle income nation to become a high income country, so there are 3 things which we have to focus. Okay, so one is investment, which we have already done it many times. Focused. Okay, so investment. Okay, so if you look at investment as such as one criteria, we focused on PSU-led investment since the second 5-year plan. PSU-led investment from the second 5-year plan. Okay, so this we have done. Okay, then after 1990s, we said we will focus on infusion. Okay, but here that is signing some technological agreements with other countries, licensing. That funding has to come from government side where you are signing technology. They will give you technology so that, and they will also teach you how to use it, the know-how, etc. All that is infusion, which you are getting it from other countries. And once infusion, you have come to a certain level, then you create your own ecosystem. That is what we call it as innovation. So that is, unless you have the ecosystem in place, you can't go ahead with innovation. Countries have failed, which have directly jumped from investment to innovation. Example is Brazil. Brazil is one such country which failed. Brazil said, we will not sign any technological agreements with other country. We will focus on our own technology. Come up with restrictions, trade barriers. Don't allow US televisions to come into India. And we will manufacture our own televisions, sell those in in Brazil market. And they started giving patents for their own technology also. But that was not a good technology. But you started giving patents. As long as you had trade barriers, Brazil was okay. But once the barrier was removed, and when US televisions entered Brazil, gone. This is what has happened. So that means if you jump also, like from straight investment to innovation, without doing efficient R&D, research and development, and you're just giving patents, it's not that you will be successful. This is what is understanding. The same example, you look at South Korea. South Korea is a high income nation now. So South Korea has followed the step 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So South Korean engineers were going to Japan to learn semiconductor technologies. They have learned it well. Initially, private players were paying for the licenses which they were taking from Japan. Japan understood that South Koreans are so intelligent that they were learning it at a very fast pace and developing the ecosystem in their country. So what Japan did, it increased the license fee to such an extent so that these private companies will not be able to pay. Then the government of South Korea took it up. The government started paying the license fees, and these engineers were learning the technology. And the same technology they used for manufacturing mobile phones, companies like Samsung, etc., semiconductor technology in their country. Once they have built the ecosystem, then R&D, and then came in innovation. And now it has beaten Japan with respect to mobile phone technology. This is how South Korea was able to transit all the 3 stages effectively. And that is how South Korea has moved from a middle income to high income country. India's situation, I think you got the point. So you can't directly jump also. So if you jump also, there is a problem. Jumping through regulations. So what is the problem for India right now? Right now, the other countries may not be interested in signing technology agreements with you because of the changing global dynamics and protectionist mechanisms that are emerging. They may not be interested in putting in FDI into India if there is a conflict. That means free flow of technology, technology diffusion is going to reduce in the next few years because of these trade barriers that are emerging, which is what the economic survey says. So trade barriers are emerging. They are not so pro in terms of signing contracts with countries now. The whole global environment right now is they want to protect their market, or there is something like friend shoring. There may be better benefits of making investment in India, but they may not do it. They might do it with their friend rather than India. Unless and until you are an ally, the money will not flow. So this is the changing trend that is there. So this makes infusion difficult for India. Are you able to get this? In the global. So if it makes infusion difficult for India on one side, and on the other side, our spending on research and development is very limited, hardly 0.6%, which is way, way less than many countries. So the scope for, without spending on R&D, you cannot focus on innovation. Then how will India move from middle income to, forget about high income, we're first interested to move to upper middle income. China we can't catch now. This is what the economic survey is talking about. So our economic survey is talking more about China. It's talking more about China as a global threat. This is what the survey is saying. Be careful with China. China is one of the dominant entity which will change the dynamics of the world now. There is no doubt about it. Okay, so that is what the economic survey also talks about. But of course, we have our own ways of doing things. That is what the economic survey explains. I think it is clear, right? So here, so now this is as per the WIPO report. India ranks 6th among top 10 patent filing offices globally. This is about patents and encouraging innovation, basically. Encouraging innovation. That is the objective. Why there is a requirement? This is, so growth is important, innovation is important, infusion is also risk now. Infusion is a problem right now. Another important observation is, government cannot focus on C and I together. Now, if you would have made observation, so this is something which you should understand. My GDP can come from C plus I plus G plus NX. Okay. So in 2018, Madam was very confident. Madam was saying, why can't India become like China? So why can't India become like China means, can we follow investment-led growth model? Can we move away from consumption-led growth to investment-led growth? This was the approach. The economic survey in 2018 was very clear that we want to move from consumption-led growth model to investment. Not even a single page will talk about this now. Not even a single page, because the global scenario is not in such a way that it will encourage this aspect. Why? Because whenever we focus on I, you have to focus on exports. Are you able to get this? This I and exports go together. Is that okay? Capital formation, and that to our we want our capital formation to happen from, we want our capital formation to happen from our household savings. And right now, household savings are coming down. This is what the data shows. And people are less interested in financial savings, and they believe that probably gold will give me better returns. So physical savings, if they are dominating my financial savings, so it becomes difficult for the savings to go into the bank, and that can create a trouble. So the current problem is, one is saving going into the bank, and from here loans, private players should take the loan, come up with new machines. This is what we call it as capital formation. And because of new machines, there is more production you're producing, that is increase in GDP. Okay. But when we save more, what will happen to our consumption? Consumption will decrease in simple logic. But if I'm producing more, the output is more, but if my consumption is also coming down, then my option will be exports. So in 2018, madam was saying, we will focus on this investment capital formation. This will be done by who? Private player, along with exports. That's how we will become $5 trillion. This was the approach. I think the approach is very clear. I hope it is clear. But now the situation, observe the situation. Though RBI yesterday reduced the repo rate by 0.25, that will not bring much difference, as far as I know, unless banks also respond immediately. Okay, so, and that should increase my saving into the bank. For savings to increase, first of all, my income should increase. Okay, so that is the reason madam's logic of income tax slabs right now, which is more pro, is because anyhow my real income is not increasing. So at least inflation is going up, rupee value is coming down, and at least if tax is less, then people will be able to put more money in the bank. This is one. Second is, when I have more money in my pocket, I have the leverage of going and consuming more. So that will also help my C. As simple as that. Okay. Geo-economic fragmentation is what is discussed in the economic survey. What does that mean? Trade barriers, increase in trade barriers, trade restrictions under WTO. That means India cannot maximize on exports. That means in my GDP formula, the problem will come with my exports, especially that X. Okay, so I cannot increase that. Okay, so but I and X go together, and we have to focus back on our domestic strength. Okay, so what is our domestic strength? Obviously, I have to focus back on consumption. So the survey, there is a C shift from investment-led growth model to consumption-led growth model. This is what is the clear observation now. So 2018, they were saying, shall we shift from consumption to investment? So now they are saying, since the situations are not pro, we have to move from investment-led growth model, where you focus more on exports. Now, of course, it's not that we'll not export. We are interested in exporting, provided they buy. But primary thing what I have to do right away would be I have to focus on my consumption. This is what you observe everywhere. The whole theme of the survey is this aspect. I hope it is clear. Is that okay? So with respect to innovation, aspect, there are these patent measures which the government has come up. Okay, so this is mainly for mains. So the government implemented several other initiatives to encourage IP protection. One is patent examination for startups, etc. Specified patent procedures, that is simplifying the patent procedures. If you look at the timeline for examination from 48 months to 31 months. This is a change that they have brought in. Okay, so from 48 months to 31 months, that is a change. Introduce certificates of inventorship, etc. Simplified trademark procedures also. The trademark procedures were also simplified. That is what you observe. The number of trademark forms have been reduced from 74 to 8, streamlining the trademark registration. So, you know, intellectual property can be patent, copyright, trademark, okay, so, or trade secret, all these, geographical indicators, okay. So, there were been some reforms. So, with respect to encouraging that third I, that is innovation. Okay, so patent approval should be easy. Okay, timeline should be reduced and simplified. The fees also has been reduced, implemented for startups, MSMEs, and educational institutions for patents, design, and trademark filing. Fees reduction was done. Okay, and even the procedure has been simplified. The timeline for examination was reduced from 48 months to 31 months. This was also a change which will promote innovation to some extent. Startup Intellectual Property Protection Scheme. So Startup Intellectual Property Protection Scheme, it provides financial and technical assistance to startups in filing and processing patent, design and trademark application, which has been extended till March 2026. There has been an extension with respect to Startup Intellectual Property Protection Scheme. So how will government encourage, or what measures have to be taken so that India will move from middle income trap? There I will use these points. Or how to encourage innovation related questions? Yes, this. Or if there is a straightforward question with respect to the recent changes with respect to patent filing, then also I should be at least remembering 3 or 4 points from here. That is the reason I pasted this. I hope it is clear, right? Okay. Now this is a data which shows how bad we are with respect to research and development. See, we are here. Okay, so R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP. Now that is the reason middle income trap will happen, means it will happen. So I want to move out of middle income trap, the third I, that is innovation. Now R&D spending is 0.6% of GDP. Okay, so this is what you can see here, 0.6. The red one, we are the red. Okay, Indonesia is better, it's also worse. Okay, so we should feel happy with Indonesia. But if you look at other countries, see the bars. See the bars, how they are. Okay, see this bar of Israel, Australia, and other countries. Okay, so fine. Developed world, one more important observation. In the developed world, R&D spending comes from private player. The ecosystem is such. Apple has spent a lot of money on research and development. Institutions spend a lot of money on research and development. But in India, R&D spending has to come from government, and government has limited resources. Private spending is limited. The economic survey also says there is a sectoral bias in R&D spending. This is also something which it says. Sectoral bias in R&D spending is most of the R&D spending goes to, it's more concentrated in pharma, that is drugs, then IT. Government's concentration is more in defense. Are you able to get this? But you don't find a wide profile where most of the sectors there is R&D spending that is happening. That is also a problem. Second is, compared to other countries, hardly we are spending 0.6% of our GDP on. Is that clear? Right. So that is. So we have to look into it from that middle income and the third I. That is what is the observation. Okay, so why did I push this box? Is this box talks about global comparison. Okay, so when we compare India with China and other countries, okay, so of course China spends a lot on education also. China spends 10% of its GDP on education. Okay, we don't spend. Our target is 6. Our target itself is 6. And we don't spend that also. Okay, so this is the problem. I can't spend on education. I can't teach them skills. I can't spend on research and development. Then there will be problem. That is the reason the 2 I's, that is infusion, anyhow is going to become difficult now. So I have to focus on innovation somehow. Why infusion will become difficult in the next chapter we will discuss. Till here, is it clear? Right? So see here, R&D related incentive systems vary across countries, yet there are common thread. China's strategy is characterized by government intervention. So R&D spending in China primarily comes from government spending. This is what is observation. So China, basically it is coming from government spending. Okay, and most of the developed countries, what we observe is it comes from private. South Korea focuses on targeted R&D investments with tax credits for investments in strategic technologies. So if you are investing in strategic technologies, South Korea incentivizes them with respect to tax benefits. And that's how you have to pull out R&D spending from the private player by creating the ecosystem. Okay, so that is what South Korea does. US relies more on market-based mechanisms and tax incentives, etc. Okay, India talks grants, loans, and other things, patent, tax exemptions, and other things. So this is what the chart talks about. Very important aspect. I hope it is clear till there. Is that okay? There was no much focus on steel. Net exporter of finished steel past decade, last 10 years, if I take the 10-year data. Okay, so that is what it says. And problems is fluctuations in the global market prices. That is one problem for the steel. Okay, high energy intensity, 2.5 tons of CO2 per ton of crude steel. So, got the point? Side. India is global is 1.9 tons. So this is basically, steel is responsible for 12% of India's greenhouse gas emissions. So if I have to, when we talk about, suppose in mains I have to write when we talk about steel industry as such. So one, I should know what is the contribution, etc. What are the problems with respect to Indian steel industry as such. Okay, so for that. Okay, so highest level of production and consumption, and issues with respect to price fluctuations in the global market, high energy intensity, 2.5 tons of CO2 per ton of crude steel. Global average is little different, 1.9 tons, 12% of India's greenhouse gas emissions are coming from steel. So this is what it talks about. So just for some information, okay, so with respect to steel, I hope it is clear. Okay. The economic survey in 3 to 4 chapters, chapter 5, chapter 7, chapter 11. There is a discussion about India's middle stand. Middle stand is something like the MSME, the smaller industries. Last year economic survey talks about the middle stand. Okay, so that is in Germany, how, or in these developed countries, how these small companies were so successful in creating employment and leading to economic growth, etc. What has to be done with respect to micro, small, and medium enterprises? I hope it is clear, right? So the question that they have asked is linking MSME to the economic growth, etc. So overall manufacturing to growth and MSMEs, what reforms have to be done so that you strengthen MSME? Few we already know from the previous budgets. So now where is the focus, you get to know from the economic survey. Is that okay? So first of all, why is this MSME so important for us? One is, it is labor intensive, very clear. Okay, labor intensive. With 20% capital, you will be able to create almost like 80% jobs. This is one data. Okay, second important observation is 20% of MSMEs have women owners. So that means MSMEs can be linked to inclusive growth. That is why it is important. Okay, then 60% of MSMEs have rural base. When I say rural base, means MSMEs are critical for my rural development. Rural development, simple. My MSMEs can act as backward integration. So today there is a threat in the geo-economic fragmentation, geopolitical fragmentation, what we talk about right now. There is a so if suppose other countries are not ready to supply raw materials to India, then our supply chains are going to be dismantled. This is one of the biggest challenge which you might face in the current scenario. The barriers with respect to, or they want to hit India, they can. So if MSMEs do well, they will act as backward integration, or they will become ancillaries for the bigger companies. So this will help in strengthening the supply chain management, which will increase the efficiency, and that will again lead to GDP growth. I hope it is clear. You're able to get this. Another important observation, labor intensive means job creation. So one is employment generation. Along with that, employment transition. So when I say employment transition, the labor can be shifted from primary sector to secondary sector. So you'll be able to handle disguised unemployment problem to some extent. Is that okay? So that means if you're able to handle disguised unemployment, that means labor productivity will increase. Labor productivity will obviously reduce my capital output ratios. Labor productivity, more efficiency, my investment will become more efficient. See, the economic survey also says it's not about investment. It is also about efficiency of investment. So to make my investment more efficient, what has to be done? One aspect the economic survey says, deregulation. This is the word they keep on using in the preface, deregulation. So what is deregulation? What should be done? Which areas we have to bring in deregulation? For example, I'll give you one small example. For example, There are labor hour restrictions for the labor, which these are guidelines given by the government as part of the Factories Act, etc., 1948, so that you will not make the labor work too much. Okay. This is there in every country. But weekly and monthly targets are there for in India. Weekly and monthly means you're talking about weekly so many hours, monthly so many hours, these kind of aspects. But in the other countries, basically, overall target is there. Okay, so this is also a regulation. You can keep the same target, but remove that weekly or monthly targets of number of hours you are making the labor work. This is also a regulation with respect to labor. So that whenever there is a peak season where the labor has to be made to work more, so you will be in a position to make them work. This is also an aspect of deregulation. Similarly, MSMEs cannot set up their production activity in the ground floor. Let's say they have to start it from the first floor. Or there has to be certain amount of space that you have to leave it for the parking and other things, built up area, etc. Okay, so 1.6 crore is something like the amount that was estimated for these things. So probably you have to bring in some changes with respect to regulating these aspects so that these MSMEs will be more free enough to produce. Are able to get this? So these are all these are also part of what? Deregulation. So when I say deregulation, this is what government talks about. Similarly, it says state support is required, especially with respect to land-related aspect. That is anything which is part of the state subject. The state support should also be required if you want to come up with deregulation. So that means the factor market reforms is what? That means all those related to my factors of production, land, labor, capital, all these, there is a requirement of deregulation. This is what the economic survey says. Whether it comes to land, when it comes to labor laws, okay, so when it comes to capital, how much capital they can raise, invest, etc. So all these areas, there is a requirement of deregulation. This will help the MSMEs to perform better. Is that okay? Understood? Right. Now see here, my investment will become more efficient if capital output ratios are less. How much initial capital I require to produce 1 unit of output? Okay, so that is what is my capital output ratio. Okay, so with less capital, if I want to produce more, all this, the MSME should be able to produce from the ground floor, or all these will also help the MSMEs to make the investment more efficient. With lesser capital, I'll be able to produce more. Are you able to get this? Is that okay? Yes. So employment transition, labor productivity, economic growth. Then if I look at MSME, there is this aspect of tribal development. Okay, so tribal indigenous products are becoming more popular, especially with respect to establishing India's brand outside. So they're able to establish India as a brand in other countries. India did not establish its brand in manufacturing still. We are in the process of establishing our brand in manufacturing, which we have not done till date. Okay, so that brand to some extent can be established if MSMEs are performing well. Is that clear? Okay, so that is about the tribal welfare, tribal development, indigenous development. MSMEs contribute to almost like 45% of exports. So government policy cannot neglect MSME. If something is contributing to 45% of the export, that means it is very much critical and important for external sector balance. External sector balance? CAD and other things. So right now, a trade deficit will also increase if the exports are not doing well. If rupee value is depreciating and dollar becomes a problem, then we might import more gold. That will also create trouble with respect to my trade deficits. So to control trade deficit, I should definitely maximize my exports, minimize my imports. So how do I maximize my exports, especially in the current environment where things are bad? This is what is the biggest challenge which will be facing. So MSMEs are also important for exports. Till here, I think it is clear. So economic survey talks about what are the main problems, let's say. For example, the MSME's main problem is one, it's credit problem. So here also there is a discussion of the credit guarantee scheme for micro and small enterprises. This is the discussion. Credit guarantee scheme is one discussion which is there. Okay, then informalization is one problem for MSME. Most of them are operating not operating in the informal sector. They're not formalized. So the economic survey talks about Udyam portal. So through this portal, how many MSMEs have been formalized? So what is the benefit of you formalizing is you will be eligible for priority sector lending benefit from banks, PSL benefit. So PSL is one benefit which you require. Is that clear? Okay, so the survey very clearly talks like these are the problems. So they are trying to address these problems. Okay, so the problems are clearly mentioned. The problem is one, it talks about credit aspect, institutional credit. Here it talks about the credit guarantee scheme for MSME was undertaken with 9,000 crores in the corpus of credit guarantee fund trust of MSME. This aimed to facilitate an additional 2 lakh crore credit for MSMEs at reduced interest rates. Okay, so this is the benefit here. Okay, so they have been credit enhancement. So one is without any security, you have to give credit to MSME. So that security will come from this credit guarantee scheme for micro and small enterprises. Okay, so there will be the fund that has been supported. The fund is pushed into it. Based on this fund as guarantee, the banks can give loans. Are you able to get this? So this is basically the benefit for MSMEs with respect to enhanced credit that will happen. Another problem is informal. Informal. Okay, then digitalization, digital presence. So digital presence is very limited for MSME. So if you don't have a digital presence, it becomes difficult for creating brand. Okay, another problem for MSMEs is delayed payments. Now this is very much focused. There is a scheme called TREADS. Okay, so using which the economic survey clearly talks about the delayed payment problem should be reduced for MSME. So the companies have to come on board of these TREADS so that you immediately make the payment. So it happens like this. Suppose MSME has delivered some goods. Okay, so MSME is a supplier. It has delivered some goods for a big company. Okay, the credit profile of the company would be analyzed, based on which on this platform, you will have a bank which comes up. Banks are there. So this program is under the control of RBI, that is the reason. So what will banks do? Analyzing the profile of the buyer, analyzing the profile of the buyer who has to make the payment. So the bank will make immediate payments to MSME, immediate payments to MSME, and later on, the money will be paid by the buyer to the bank at certain interest, which would be decided. Are you able to get this? So what is the benefit for MSME? Delayed payment is one problem, because one of the biggest problem MSMEs are facing is bigger corporates, what they feel is, MSME is dependent on me. So I'll make the payment, let's say after 1 year. So cash flow will not be there. Sales is okay, but what about cash flow? So cash flow is getting affected. So our company profits are cash flows are more important than profits. If my cash flows are getting stuck, the MSME faces a lot of problems. So this was a very good initiative, which personally I've seen this. Okay, so this is basically delayed payment problem that has been addressed by the government. Is that okay till here? Okay, so then there are other what other problems for MSMEs can be competition from MNCs, etc. So economies of scale and other problems, etc. So more informal, more would be the problems of competing with the bigger entities. Okay, so that is also an issue for MSME. So economies of scale is very less for MSME. Delayed payments, digital presence is limited, informal. Okay, getting credit is difficult, raising capital from the market is difficult for MSMEs, etc. Okay, then regulation of the government. So that is the reason deregulation. With respect, that is excessive regulation of the government. How will I run my MSME? How much will I produce? How much should I leave for the building space? All these are also regulations. So regulations are not just the central government. It includes the state. It starts from land to labor to many other things. So all this is part of the regulation aspect. Is that okay? That will also reduce the efficiency of MSME. Till here, is it okay? Then what else? What could be other problems? Any other problem for MSME? Okay, social security, informal MSMEs, that is the problem. Okay. MSMEs are, most of the MSMEs are remaining small, or we call it as dwarf MSME. So this is one problem which they are trying to address now. That is something like these MSMEs are in existence for 10 years, but they don't have even 100 permanent employees. So that is what is MSMEs becoming dwarfs. And MSMEs could not create as many jobs as we expected in spite of taking all the benefits from the government. So this is the background. From this background, now that is, we will see what they have done. Okay, so this is transforming MSMEs financing through timely payments. This is what about the TREADS. So tomorrow in Way Forward, this can be a prelims question also. Are you able to get this? Very important, because it's given in a box means it is obviously important. Remember, separately is talking about a program. The launch of TREADS has been an important step taken by government for benefiting MSMEs and helping them realize their receivables in a time-bound manner at a relatively lower financing cost. Okay, so TREADS regulated by RBI. This is also data which is important. TREADS is regulated by RBI, is a marketplace that enables buyers such as government departments, public sector undertakings, corporates to honor timely payments to their MSME suppliers as per MSMED Act 2006. This can be a statement. Remember, it is departments, public sector undertakings, corporates, everybody. You have to make the payments on time. Okay, so there will be a support system ensured by the banks or the lenders. They will pay the MSME and the settlement will be done between these companies and the bank. That is why it is under RBI. I hope it is clear, right? So this is something which you have to focus. Government's mandate for companies with a turnover above 250 crores. Government is coming up with this compulsory mandate that your turnover is above 250 crores. You have to join this TREADS platform. This is how this will help in delayed payment problem. Then government self-reliant India fund. This is also stated in the economic survey. SRI fund with a corpus of 50,000 crores. The fund has a provision of 10,000 crores from government and 40,000 through private equity or venture capitalists. So there's a separate fund which has been created, that is self-reliant India fund with a corpus of 50,000 crores. This is what you have to remember. And Micro and Small Enterprises Facilitation Council. This is basically if the payments are not coming, where do you want to go and tell? Okay, so kind of a grievance. Okay, so you have MSE FC, that is Micro and Small Enterprises Facilitation Council. Okay, so these are some benefits of MSME. Okay, so jobs, growth, inclusiveness, labor productivity, external balance, and other things. Okay, so then if you see this chart, increase registration on Udyam portal. This shows formalization. So Udyam portal, increase registration. So MSME is very important for both prelims and mains. So you observe here the number of MSMEs that got registered on Udyam portal and became eligible for priority sector lending. This is nothing but formalization of economy, formalization of MSME. So this is what the chart is talking about. Is that okay? Okay, let's move forward. Of course, this is just for your observation, but we can write some points here. Now, one more problem in industrial GVA is with respect to states. Okay, states are placed here. This color coding is if you're red less than 25% basically global Indian average, and you're doing better basically than the national average, it is green in these aspects. Okay, so this is what is the chart. Okay, so here if you see, states with industrial share higher or lower by 25% of the national average. 25% of the national average or greater, then this is in green. Okay, less than 25% of national average, you will be in red. In line with national average, then you are yellow. Are you able to get this? Okay, see Rajasthan here in line with Okay, so Gujarat, except mining. Okay, so you can see industry green, manufacturing green, electricity green. Okay, so that is what is the observation. Okay, so there are some problems primarily in the eastern and northeastern states. This is what they say. So industrial development, more inclusivity, one size fits all doesn't work. So there should be policies which are specific to these areas which are not doing well. Is that okay? Yes. Now, state share in total industrial gross state value addition. This is state share. Okay, so this is state share. So you see Gujarat and Maharashtra. Okay, so this is how there is huge disparity with respect to the states. This is what the chart talks about. Okay, so nothing much about the chart, just an information to tell there is a lot of disparity with respect to contribution to of states GVA to the industrial output. Okay, only a few states like Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Himachal are able to cash on their high level of dependence on industrial sector. Now, Economic Survey has put one more graph, which I have not pushed it here. Too many graphs will confuse you. Your industrial sector is good. Your contribution is more. Your GVA contribution is coming more from industrial sector, but at the same time, it is not leading to increase in per capita incomes. This is what the survey says. There are only very few states whose contribution to industry is high, but at the same time, per capita incomes are also increasing. But other states, the problem is there is contribution to industry. Okay, but at the same time, their per capita incomes are not increasing. Okay, so there are different states have different approaches. Kerala is comparatively less industrial than many other states, but it does well with respect to construction, obviously tourism. Okay, so Tamil Nadu, highest factories per person, followed by Gujarat. This is some data. Highest factories per person, it is in Tamil Nadu. I hope it is clear. Topics are boring. We can't help it. But the one thing I can say is you can use it for mains. 100%. Okay, so topics can be used for making the answer better. When you're writing a question on MSME, manufacturing, economic growth, okay, measures taken to increase economic growth. So you can add a lot of value. That is for sure. Okay, you can add on new points in your notes from here. Is that clear? Okay. Now this is the topic. This I've just pushed in growth. These were the questions in growth. How UPSC has asked questions earlier. The linking each area was linked to growth. V shape, K shape discussion now also. Okay, K shape recovery, V shape. They'll fight everybody. Okay, so no, it's a V shape recovery. No, it's a K shape recovery. Only few sectors, small sectors, others are not doing well. Okay, so there was a startups role in growth. Okay, role of manufacturing sector. I showed you the question already. Okay, infrastructure potential for growth and inclusive growth already asked. Potential GDP already asked. Okay, capital intensive, labor intensive growth question already asked. Labor intensive exports question already asked. Mains question already asked. Labor intensive export. How does India increase labor intensive exports? Savings important factor for growth. Other things other than savings for growth. This is a chart which shows that with growth as the main theme, every year there was a question. Every year. So this is what you should understand. So that is the importance of this growth topic. Okay, so for mains especially. For prelims, few things anyhow, I mentioned it. Okay, so here this is what madam was talking about. So this is not this year. This is 18, this is last year. Okay, so here you can see now complete. Why? Because why I have put this is to achieve growth only. No? All these policies are to achieve the growth, and that is the topic, medium term growth. So in 2018, madam was talking about $5 trillion. Of course, in 5 years, we will achieve. And here you can see, these are the things. This is something madam was saying, these are gears. So the gears will move together. So if all these things rotate together, then this gear will also rotate. And that's how I will reach 5 trillion. And my primary focus, investment. Which investment? Private investment. To export. This is what. This is 18. Situations don't allow you to follow the same model every now and then. Then last year, of course, last year again, there was a change here where we were talking about Amrit Kal. And you find these: youth, financial sector, green growth, infrastructure, inclusive development, reaching the last mile. Okay, so here there is no much discussion on export logic here. That means last year also there is a clear understanding. That is what we have to understand. Okay, so this is the topic: medium term outlook, deregulation drives growth. Okay, medium term outlook, deregulation drives growth. I'll give you break after 15 minutes. You're not able to sit, then after 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah, fine, fine. See here, now, for understanding this growth situation, why I have shown you that chart is to show that this chapter was there since last year also this chapter was there. So medium term outlook with respect to growth. Okay, but the topic itself says deregulation drives growth. The topic itself mentions, this was not mentioned earlier. So here government is very clear what is going to drive growth. So deregulation as an aspect becomes important. So in my answers, wherever possible, whenever a growth question comes up, deregulation. Got the point right? So this is what. Now here if you see, now this is the data, important data. Now what is the observation? IMF comes up with some logic. The logic is India from 3.6, $3.9 trillion economy, you will reach 5 trillion by 2028. This is what is the data. 2028. Actually, we should have achieved it by 24, 25, but COVID and other problems, so therefore we could not reach 5 trillion. So this $5 trillion is nominal GDP. Are you able to get this? But 6.4% growth which government has put, that is real GDP growth. Okay, so nominal GDP is the target, but 6.4 is the real GDP growth. I think that is clear, right? So here $3.6 trillion, 3.9. By 28, we will touch $5.5 trillion. By 30, we will reach $6.3 trillion economy. We will be $6.3 trillion economy by 2030. Of course, IMF also made an assumption. The assumption is that our rupee will not depreciate too much. Okay, why? Growing economies have stronger currencies. Simple logic. Growing economies have more foreign investments moving. There is more trust in growing economies. FDIs will move, more dollars will come. So my rupee will not depreciate. But of course, we touched 87. That's a different case. Last 2 days back, we have hit the mark. You know, hit the mark. We have hit the mark which IMF is not able to understand. This is 30. IMF is talking 85.6. We have hit 2 days back. We have hit a 6 or 87 plus. Okay, so this is something. This is tricky. But IMF logic is that the rupee value will not increase. Sorry, rupee value will not decrease as it has decreased in the last 20 years or last 15 years. Reason being, last 15 years, suppose let's say on an average, my rupee value is depreciating 3%. Okay, it will not be at that rate now because IMF has a very positive opinion on our growth. So in growing economies, currencies will be strong. Why? Investors will invest, more dollars will come, so dollar should. But now dollar is differently reacting because if you would observe the dollar index, So dollar index is that index which measures the dollar strength with all other liquid currencies. All other liquid currencies. So dollar index is increasing and increasing and increasing. If you're looking into the newspaper, you should have understood. More dollar index is increasing means these FIs also will move out of India. Dollar is strong, so strong, then FIs will also move out of India. So this is one important problem. But here the assumption is different. The assumption is a little different. So here, the rise of China, now the whole logic here, see, the topic itself was started like this. The rise of China as manufacturing powerhouse and its impact on manufacturing aspirations of other nations, as well as supply of minerals, materials, machinery, pose challenges. You can't ignore China. That's for sure. China, in fact, US cannot ignore. If China is going at this pace in next few years, after China, will beat all other 10 manufacturing countries together, allies of US, will not be able to catch China. This is how China is growing right now. This is what China, deep seek. The fear of technology is sufficient to crumble markets. Got the point? Fear. How it is, nobody knows. But China, that they know, means it will be cheap. As simple as that. It will be cheap and there is assured guarantee that it will do well. That is sufficient. Now see here, IMF projections nominal growth of 10% from 25 to 30. What IMF says is nominal projection, nominal GDP growth rate of 10% if I grow, I will reach 6 trillion, 6.3 trillion by 2030. Is that okay? Nominal. So you're okay. Nominal. Not the real one. Real. Okay, it's nominal. Current prices. Nominal is current prices. Okay, so if you grow at this rate, then this you will be able to achieve this. This is what the economic survey is talking about. I hope it is clear. Okay, so the big problem here is, one is the middle income, all that which we have discussed. So the main problem is China's role is very critical, and the international situation right now is all with respect to global dynamics. This is the changing global. You have to achieve this growth in the context of changing global dynamics. This is what is the survey talking about. And two, climate change and global. Why climate change? Climate change, the transition to clean economies will happen through China. Why? All the technologies required for clean energy are with China. That means if that is more focus on climate change, you have to achieve the objectives of climate change, the technologies required will also, you will achieve climate, your clean technology, transition to clean energy will happen through China. This is what is the discussion. I hope it is clear. Is that okay? So the economic survey again talks about few more things here. One is global trade growth earlier. So earlier GDPs were growing, our economic growth was growing through collaboration. After 1990s, it's all about globalization or interdependence. Are you able to get this? Okay, so it is all through collaboration that we were growing, but now the situation is little different. So this is some data that is given. There was a question in UPSC mains earlier. The discussion was, capitalism was successful in removing many from the shackles of poverty, but at the same time has increased inequalities. This was the question. I think it was 2015 or 2016. Okay, so capitalism was able to remove many from the shackles of poverty, but at the same time, it has led to increase in inequalities. Are you able to get this? Okay, what measures have to be taken to make my capitalism more inclusive? So this was the area of question that they have asked earlier. This shows that capitalism had an important role to remove many from the shackles of poverty, but at the same time, some were left behind in capitalism, that there was a higher increase with respect to disparities and inequality. Inequality can be in countries also, between countries also. Global South. Are you able to get this? So inequalities between countries also. So here if you see, 1980 global trade accounted for about 39% of world GDP. Okay. This is about the trade data. 1980s global trade accounted for 39% of world GDP, By 2012, the share has increased to 60%. What does it indicate? It indicates deep integration of global markets. This is what that data indicated. There was deep integration of global markets. First thing. FDI. Global FDI inflows grew by 54 billion in 1980 to 1.5 trillion in 2019. 2019. So showcasing the increasing role of multinational corporations in cross-border investments. So globalization is not about movement of only goods and services. It involves movement of capital. It also involves movement of human capital. Movement of human capital, movement of capital, as well as movement of goods and services. Economic growth and poverty reduction. The global economy grew from 11 trillion in 1980 to over 100 trillion in 2022. So in this integrated setup, globalized setup, there was huge. So now if you come up with regulations and restrictions which they are doing, the impact on global trade on some countries is going to be very high. This is what the economic survey says. So extreme poverty rates, those living on less than $2.15 a day. This is the data of World Bank. So less than $2.15 a day, reduced from 42% of the global population in 91 to 8% in 2019. What does it indicate? Capitalism was able to remove people, some from the shackles of poverty, but it has increased inequality. That is the question that they have asked. So capitalism was successful in removing, and capitalism is, or market economies of global integration basically. Okay, so, but now the challenge that they are talking about is, all this was earlier, but now India is posed with a new challenge, a different challenge altogether. That is what is geo-economic fragmentation. So what is the geo-economic fragmentation? Here you will not find much of integration between countries. The countries will come up with tariff barriers, trade barriers. They will only do trade with their own friends or alliances with vested interests. Or they will use their technology, regulate technologies to hit other countries. For example, semiconductor technology is there. They might say, I will not give it to India. And that is how decoupling of technology. They will play with technology so that you will not be able to manage things. Okay, so this is the scenario right now. And that can be that, and economic survey proves this through data. Earlier it talks about how integrated they were. And now the scenario of you reaching that 30, by 2030, you want to become, let's say, 6 trillion or 6.3 trillion, which IMF is saying. But that has to be achieved in a different environment, and that environment is quite different from what you have seen all these years. Are you able to get this? Okay, so what you find is, one important observation is, this is what you find, the increase in trade restrictive measures. This is the data which is, it shows the geo-economic fragmentation is reflected primarily through trade. Primarily, you want to see the geo-economic fragmentation, how can I see? I can see the data of trade restrictions which have been put under the WTO. So under WTO, you'll be able to find how much trade restrictions, how much non-tariff barriers have been increasing in the last few years. And this clearly indicates that there is, this is what the economic survey says. So here if you see, from here 258, 1183, then here 955, 23, 24, it is almost like 1320. So these are nothing but the trade coverage of new import restrictive measures. Okay, so this is what. Then here one more observation. Proliferation of trade and investment restrictions. This is the new restriction, the red one which you see. New restrictions per year. Okay. The green line is the average. Okay, so the number of restrictions which you see, 2020, COVID plus, 21, 22, 23. You see this? This shows the environment is more restrictive than ever. This is what it says. And there are non-trade, national security, geopolitical, climate change mitigation. These are the areas where the restrictions have been imposed. This you need not remember exactly, but these are some areas which he's talking about. So this clearly shows the environment has completely changed in which India has to operate. break in 1 minute. Okay, so till here I think it is clear. Okay, so here China's prominent role in global supply chain. So the survey clearly says the globe is worried about China. We are also worried. We will not mention it. Okay, but we will put our efforts. What we have to do, we'll have a clear plan. We have a clear plan. The clear plan is mentioned, what we have to do. What we have to do in spite of all these situations, how do I increase growth? This is the focus of the topic. Now, this is just for information. Here, if I observe, this is projection of 2030, changing structure of global industrial production by 2030 projection. Situation in 2000. This is situation in 2000. See, in situation in 2000, China, somewhere here, 6%. Are you able to get this? Okay, so projection. See this? This is China. Okay, where are we? Okay, so this one, the orange one. Is that okay? Understood? This is the projection. Now, this is the problem, big problem with the economic survey. Very clearly mentions. Why Trump is also talking about tariffs, you should understand. He knows that, yes, we have a solid competitor for us. Okay, he clearly understood that we have a solid competitor for us, that is for sure. Okay, the way they are doing right now. Okay, so I hope it is clear. Okay, so here, okay. So this is the data which talks about changing structure of the global industrial production. This was earlier seen during the first industrial revolution, that is UK. This dominance, okay. Never ever you have seen such kind of domination. Earlier it was UK. Then after the disintegration of USSR, rise of a unipolar world, that time. Even after the Second World War, you can say it is US. Domination of US after the Second World War. And now it seems to be, I don't know what, but it seems to be China. Only 3 such scenarios were there, including this. One, first industrial revolution, then Second World War plus US, and now this is the threat. I hope it is clear. Okay, so in this situation, you have to increase 5 trillion and $6.3 trillion. That means our strategies cannot be same. You can't write the same thing in your answer, obviously. You have to, when the question comes up, what should be done by India to increase its economic growth, then obviously we can't write focus on investment-led growth model. Got the point, right? So you can't write focus on investment. Rather, you should say, as stated in economic survey, these are the things which we have to do. Okay, take a break.
Do you find yourself alone in the revision process for UPSC Prelims? Do not succumb to the pressure. Instead, make revision your strength with the specifically curated Quick Revision Classes 2025. Starting from 5th February at 1 p.m., the classes help you align your strategy with complete revision assistance, offering 40 classes to cover important general studies subjects in a short and crisp format. Quick revision material for each subject for ease in revision. Focus on core subjects such as polity, economy, history, and more. Integrated assessment with one-on-one feedback to address weak areas and build over strengths. Ease in revision with a personalized student portal and access to live and online classes. Gear up and back your preparation for prelim success using strong revision and recall strategy. Prelims is knocking at your doorstep. Are you ready to conquer it heads-on? Do not let the paucity of time determine your success in UPSC Prelims 2025. Fast-pace your preparation with the fast-track course offering coverage of syllabus ranging from polity, economy, geography, environment, international relations, science and technology, art and culture, and Indian history. Starting fresh or looking for revision guidance, Fast Track course has got you covered. Enroll for coverage of GS Prelims syllabus, personalized mentoring, current affairs preparation, sectional mini tests, access to live and online classes. Admission to the course is now open.
Revolutionize your current affairs preparation with the Vision IS digital current affairs platform. This all-in-one platform ensures smarter, faster and more effective current affairs preparation. With Vision IS Digital Current Affairs Premium, you get visual intelligence. Get AI-powered answers to your current affairs queries, instant and tailored to the syllabus. Daily answer writing. Refine your mains preparation with expert feedback on structured answers, quick notes and highlights. Simplify note-taking and create personalized revision materials for quick access. Free features include daily news summaries, curated from trusted sources like The Hindu and Indian Express to save you hours, downloadable PDFs. Keep resources organized for easy revision. Daily quizzes. Test yourself with MCQs that track your progress. Student dashboard. Monitor performance and stay on track with your goals. From reading and testing through revision, Vision IS Digital Current Affairs is your one-stop solution for mastering current affairs. Visit our website today and transform your preparation journey.
Okay. So this is about China dominance. Dominance of China. China will account for 45% global manufacturing, single-headedly, matching or outmatching US and allies. Matching US and its allies or even crossing US and its allies. This is what you will find. And especially clean technology. That is when we talk about electric vehicles, critical minerals, etc. China is very good with respect to these. Okay. EVs, critical minerals, because of these reasons, China's dominance is clear. Okay. So road to energy transition also runs through China. This is the important aspect which the economic survey says. So energy transition or the road to clean energy also has to be achieved through China. Okay. India sources 75% of lithium-ion batteries from China. Spelling mistake. Okay. If trade of critical minerals is disrupted, investment in renewable energy and EVs could be lowered by 30% by 2030. Is that okay? So this is a problem which China can do. And here if you see, solar PV manufacturing by country and region. And this is wafers, modules, polysilicon, etc. You observe Chinese dominance, the red one, in everything. Solar PV capacity, country and region 2021 now. This is 2010. You can observe the red one is China. And these are some things which are required for energy, clean energy. Okay, so energy transition as such. So these are the things which you use for the electric vehicles and other things as well. So here if you observe Chinese dominance very clearly visible, 2021, the red one is China. Everywhere there is China, modules, wafers, polysilicon, everywhere. That is what the economic survey says. Energy transition will also happen through China. About 60% of world wind installed capacity is sourced from China. China also houses nearly 80% of world battery manufacturing capacity pivotal to energy transition. These are the reasons. Another important aspect is 70% of world's rare earth minerals, which are critical sources for high storage batteries, are processed by Chinese companies. Very clear the domination of China with respect to energy. Okay, so then what should India do? This is what is the most important. So the economic survey talks about how do we focus on our growth prospects. So here if you see Viksit Bharat 2047, India wants to be a developed country by 2047. The economic survey gives a clear roadmap, what has to be done. So this is the global environment situation it explained. And in this context, what are we going to do? That is what is the focus here. The first thing here, it mentions sustainable and employment sensitive growth. India should focus on sustainable and employment sensitive growth. Why employment sensitive? Because you have to reap the benefits of the demography, young population. So right now you can do it. Generate 8 million jobs per year. This, how do you do that? Also increasing the share of manufacturing to GDP. This is very clearly mentioned. Muted manufacturing problem you have to handle. You have to increase the share of manufacturing to GDP. Then integrating into global value chain. What is it? Integrating into global value chain. So suppose you are making an Apple iPhone. Okay, let's say the battery is coming from France, R&D is happening in California, assembling is happening in China and India. So to be a part of the global value chain, India has to put in a lot of effort. You need to integrate with the global value chain. I hope it is clear. Okay, so this is what we have to do. Number one, number two, and increasing share of manufacturing to GDP and employment sensitive growth. So then the second important aspect which economic survey says is we have to create a viable middle stand. Middle stand is MSME. There should be a very objective focus on MSME. We already discussed MSME in the other topic, industry. Okay, so viable middle stand, that is MSME. Okay, so what is the action plan? Economic survey clearly says the action plan would be focusing in domestic growth. So your focus should primarily be on domestic growth. Is that clear? So here 2047 sustainable and employment sensitive growth. Is that okay? Then jobs, increasing manufacturing contribution to GDP, focusing on MSME, and the roadmap would be focusing on increasing the domestic growth. Nowhere we are talking about can we become like China, export-led growth model. This is not the focus in the survey. This is what you observe. So we have to focus on domestic growth. Is that clear? Understood. This is the change which you see, right? Now, how do you achieve this? Deregulation for growth. First thing the economic survey says, how do you achieve this? One is deregulation. Then augmenting internal capacities for growth. You have to, internal changes have to be made with respect to achieving economic growth. Okay, so then role of private sector. What would be the role of private sector for enhancing this growth? And energy transition will be done the Indian way. What can we do? We have understood energy transition has to be done through China. Okay, all these things are very clear. But how do we achieve it? We are going to achieve it through these aspects: deregulation, augmenting internal capacities, role of private sector, and energy transition. Is that clear? Okay, so this is the main focus. So the economic survey clearly talks about deregulation. So deregulation, of course, this economic survey talks about deregulation in the 11th chapter. Of course, the solutions were given in the 11th chapter. So the economic survey says deregulation is amending complicated procedures. That is what is deregulation, including the state government policies, etc. So that we will do it with respect to industry. Then again, deregulation has to be brought in with respect to labor flexibility. I was talking about labor flexibility. I said labor hours, prescribed labor hours, etc., let's say for the whole year in other countries. But here you are talking about weekly and monthly. That will restrict the employer or the manufacturer. Whenever there is a higher demand or a peak season, he is not able to use it for his benefit. So these kind of deregulations also have to be focused in the employment. And then even a deregulation also as part of education. That means the UGC, AICT, all these should be in line with the new education policy. That is one. Second is, when it comes to institutions, higher educational institutions, they should be given more freedom with respect to deciding the course framework. Okay, so these things are also basically focused as part of the deregulation. Are you able to get this? Deregulation at higher education, employment, that is labor flexibility, as well as industry. I hope it is clear. Okay, so the economic survey talks about some examples here. List of areas of regulation and provisions that are affecting the business. Okay, so where is that we have to focus primarily? So Factor market reforms means all those things that are affecting the factors of production. That means reforms with respect to land, labor, okay, building and construction, town and country planning, building bylaws, fire safety, many things there are, deregulation has to be brought in. Labor, rules under the code, factory laws, etc., all this would be part of the labor. Okay, logistics, warehousing, logistic policies, building bylaws, etc. Okay, so all these environment laws for prevention and control of pollution of water, and sector specific would be food safety, legal, metrology, etc. All these. That means you have to focus on primarily land, building, labor, and several other aspects. So this is a focus with respect to regulation aspect. That means you have to deregulate many of these. This can be done with the support of state government. So when we talk about the doing business index or ease of doing business, that will be enhanced only if the state governments also can bring in the concept of deregulation. That is what the economic survey says. States should compare itself with other states and other countries to bring in efficient models so that there will be better ease of doing business. This is what they talk about. Okay, so compliance burden, that is basically reducing administrative cost incurred by businesses to demonstrate adherence to laws. So this is basically compliance. Then digitize system, processes and information. Set legal safeguards for enforcement, etc. So these are some standards where you are trying to make ease of doing business more easy. That is basically the business rules will be more simple. So here if you see, states have exclusive jurisdiction to regulate list 2 subjects like land, buildings, water, local trade and commerce. States can regulate concurrently with union government on list 3 like labor, welfare, electricity. So that is the reason these things, especially those which are in the list 2 and list 3, there is a support system that is required of the state government, only then we can do it. Okay, this is what the survey says. You need not remember those boxes. Just to tell you like how are we going to achieve? Most important is deregulation. Where are we going to deregulate? One is industry. Then second, we are going to deregulate with respect to labor. Third, they were talking about higher education. These are the 3 areas where we will bring in deregulation primarily. Okay, so when it comes to industry and increasing efficiency, it cannot be done only by the central government. This is what the survey says. So because if you want to bring factor market reforms, especially the state support is very much important for ease of doing business. This is what the survey is saying. Is that okay? Ease of doing business, especially with respect to land, building, construction related aspects, the state government's role is critical. Even those which fall in the concurrent list, for example, labor related aspects, it becomes very important for the state governments to implement deregulation efficiently. Then only the growth prospects would be better. So here we are going to work in this area. That is what it is clearly mentioned. Then employment, introducing flexibility with respect to employment. One is we have inflexible labor hours. I was talking about this. Okay, so that means it's not that we will create a trouble for the labor, but at the same time, there should be flexibility with respect to hours. Especially you can't have weekly, monthly timelines with respect to the number of hours they work. This is what is the discussion. Because we are competing with countries like Vietnam. And Vietnam has more flexible, the labor hour concept already in place. And Vietnam is one of a good competitor right now. Okay, so of course, we're not talking about China now. We're talking about Vietnam and other countries, okay, so which are increasing their exports, etc. So now, when we talk about Vietnam, there are laws with respect to labor flexibility, but at the same time, the number of hours required is you not micromanage it weekly and hourly. This is what. Factory Act 1948 limits daily and weekly working hours, which prevents manufacturers from meeting demand surges. Okay. Then overtime for factory workers. Factory Act 1948 limits overtime working hours, which is lower than competing countries. Overtime working hours. If you work overtime, you get payment. That's there, right? But the question is there why so many limits on these aspects related to overtime working? So that also has to be deregulated. So this is basically in the factory environment especially, or an aspect related to labor, government talks about bringing in flexibility. So similarly, government also talks about bringing in flexibility with respect to higher education. So bringing the education system in line with the new education policy, this is one. And especially there is also discussion with respect to institutions must be free to remain flexible with their coursework. So government, you should not interfere. They can come up with their own course module based on the requirements. Okay, so these are the areas where deregulation has to be focused. I hope it is clear till there. Okay. Okay, so earlier years, last few years, what was the discussion? How, where will we focus, etc. Government was saying one is agri reforms, boosting private sector investment, expansion of middle stand. This was also there last year also, last few years. Deregulation, physical and digital connectivity, MSMEs. Middle stand is MSME. Okay, then bridging education and employment gap. This is basically industry, you have industry university interface. Okay, so the skills which you learn in the university should be helpful for job. Okay, so that is one focus where government was talking about. Financing of green transition in India and building state capacity and capability. So these are some areas where we will focus. But now the most important aspect, government is not talking about much on these things. Government is primarily talking about one, expansion of middle stand. This is one. Two, deregulation with respect to factor market reforms. That is the main focus. Deregulation with respect to factor market reforms. Okay, so that is another important aspect. Then higher education is one aspect where more freedom has to be given. So earlier it was primarily talking about the skill sets, etc. Here government says we will move away. You decide the content, you decide the course material. It should be useful for job creation as such. Okay, so here earlier it was bridge. But how to bridge it? If you interfere. Got the point, right? If it is not in line. Okay, the question here now government says we will not interfere much. Come up with those policies which are more in line with the requirements of the job market. Is that okay? So come up with your course material which more aligns with the job market. So this is the change that you see from the previous survey. Is this clear? Yeah. Okay, so now there were questions in this topic. Basically, we can see the questions like, where do we use it? Okay, so analyze the factors hindering India's ability to fully harness this demographic dividend. Suggest policy measures to address challenges. Discuss the potential of agriculture sector in driving inclusive growth and employment generation in India. These were some questions earlier. Okay, so factors hindering India's ability with respect to harnessing demographic dividend. So primarily to harness demographic dividend, one is education, two health, skills. Then comes, what can I take from the economic survey? Is this aspect of deregulation. Okay, so one is labor flexibility rules, etc. Or you can also talk about the higher education aspect. Then industry, university interface. Are you able to get this? So these are the areas which you can pick up from economic survey. Is this clear? Right? There was a question on labor productivity earlier. Okay, so this was the question that was asked, I think in 2019, I think. Okay, so economic growth in the recent past has been led by increase in labor productivity. Okay, explain this statement. Suggest the growth pattern that will lead to creation of more jobs without compromising on labor productivity. This was the question. So how do you increase labor productivity? Okay, so how labor productivity will enhance growth? So this is basically a question which we can look at from this perspective. So if economic growth is equal to the rate of investment multiplied by 1 by ICOR, incremental capital output ratio. Okay, or capital output ratio. The amount, how much of additional capital I need to produce one single unit of output. Okay, so that means my growth is directly proportional to the rate of investment, inversely proportional to the capital output ratio. Okay, so what is the question is saying? Labor productivity will increase means this ICOR will decrease. My investment will become more efficient and growth will increase. This is what is the logic. So what are the areas where I have to focus if I have to increase growth? So one is you have to shift the labor from the primary to secondary sector so that the marginal productivity of labor will increase. This is the logic. So to increase the marginal productivity, I have to create more jobs in my manufacturing. That is also the focus in the economic survey. So the economic survey says I have to increase the contribution of manufacturing to GDP. This is the first thing. That means solve the problem of muted manufacturing. This is what the survey is also saying. Second thing, what the survey is saying for this question, if you have to observe middle stand, focusing on MSMEs. Okay. Then 3, labor productivity and enhancing growth depends on the regulatory policies or deregulation of the government. I'm only talking about the policies which I'll take from the survey. You can write many other things also. Okay, so deregulation is another aspect and support of the state government. So this deregulation economic survey was talking about labor policies also. Labor policies also. Flexible labor policies with the support of the state government. This will also increase my labor productivity. Are you able to get this? Okay, so the overall efficiency of the companies or MSMEs also is dependent on this aspect of deregulation. Overall efficiency also. Okay. So in the subsequent chapters you will read, for example, there is a focus on labor intensive services. Of course, this is not discussed in this chapter. So focus on labor intensive services. Labor intensive services, not just IT and IT enabled services, then you will be able to create more jobs. If you are focusing on hotel industry, tourism, etc. So that will also enhance the number of jobs you are creating, not just focusing on IT and ITES, which is the knowledge-based sector, etc. Okay, so if you want to make the investment more efficient, that is what low capital output ratios will do. So then deregulation aspects related to land, labor, capital, okay, building, construction. Suppose MSMEs need not only start manufacturing in the first floor, it can start manufacturing from the ground floor itself. Effective utilization of space and building area, etc. That will also make my investment more efficient. My initial investment will become, with less initial investment, I'll be able to generate more output because of these focuses which we do, and that will have an impact on my economic growth. These are the additions which you will think while writing the answer from the economic survey. Once you know the concept, this is Herod-Dahmer. So once we know Herod-Dahmer, then we know the regular answer. The same question, if it is asked today, you can write a better answer. That is what should be the objective of reading survey. I should write a better answer. I'll be writing 2 points extra from the economic survey. That's it. It's not that they will ask a direct question from economic. If they're asking, it is good. But they don't ask that way, right? It's a question which comes up, then I should be able to use it. Okay, so that is how you have to think. Okay, so this was a previous question. Factors for growth, savings is the most effective one. Do you agree? What are the factors that will affect growth? This was the question. From the survey, what are the factors that you can think can affect my economic growth? That is how you have to be thinking. So from the topic, now we are talking about the outlook of growth. Okay, so from the economic survey, now the growth which you are going to achieve is more because of our domestic savings only. Right now, this is how you can start the answer. Why? The changing global dynamics. Is that okay? Or you have the geo-economic fragmentation that is happening right now. Okay, so rather than investment as such or the foreign investment, rather than the foreign investments like FDI, that will boost your growth more, the role of savings or domestic savings or household savings become more critical. Now I can think from this perspective. Are you able to get what I'm trying to say? Okay, so earlier, yes, C was there, I is there, NX is there. But now domestic consumption and domestic savings become more critical because the economic survey clearly says there is a threat for foreign direct investments coming into different countries because of friend shoring and other problems, barriers which are going to be kept. So therefore, in that context, what becomes more critical for my growth is my domestic consumption, that is a growth story right now, and my increase in local savings or the household savings. That becomes important. So what are the factors that will affect my savings? As stated in the budget, government's tax policies in the budget right now. Okay, so where government has given a lot of leeway with respect to tax payments. This is all fiscal stimulus. So tax rebates offered by the government, which have moved almost to 12 lakhs, will help me to consume more and save more. As simple as that. Okay, that means this is about the fiscal policy of the government. Second, RBI's effort in terms of handling inflation. So of course, till the recent past, we have followed a tight monetary policy. Tight monetary policy. Yesterday, maybe they have reduced the repo rate by 0.25 because you are forced to do it because of the global scenario and the growth situation. So our growth last quarter was almost like 5.4%, which is too low. And to do something with that, you had to come up with reducing the repo rates. Otherwise, we have a lot of effort that was pushed in by the government also by reducing the custom duties, okay, import taxes, etc., to control the cost push inflation. And inflation is one of the most important factor that will affect my savings. Higher is the inflation, lower would be my saving capacity. I think it is clear. So, whenever such question comes up, what are the factors that will affect growth? Then you should think of land, labor, capital, global dynamics, infrastructure. This is the template. Land, labor, capital, global dynamics, infrastructure. These are the things that will affect my economic growth. Fiscal and monetary policies of government, labor productivity, skill sets of the human capital. This is the template. So in that template, with respect to labor, what are the reforms? With respect to land, what are the reforms? With respect to easy movement of capital, internationalization of rupee, movement of investments, what are we doing? Are you able to understand? Okay, so with respect to infrastructure, what is the government doing? For example, with respect to infrastructure, national infrastructure pipeline, national monetization pipeline, or national logistics policy, PM Gati Shakti. Like this. Okay, with respect to land, what did government do? Labor, what are the So from the economic survey with respect to labor, what is government talking about? In the economic survey with respect to land, what is government talking about? This is how it is. So what are the other factors that will affect my growth? So when I read economic survey and write the same answer, probably my answer should be better than my competitor. Otherwise, there's no point in reading. I think you got it right. So this is how the thought process change. My approach with respect to writing growth-based questions should change based on the current situation. Is that okay? Understood? Okay. So if you would have seen, this is like resources. How will government raise more resources? So there is data from the economic survey. For example, the tax base or whatever, how is government raising money? What is the tax to GDP ratio now, etc. And how is public sector going to raise resources, etc. How is the private sector going to raise resources? Okay, so unless and until resource mobilization is efficient for the government, it will become difficult to enhance growth. So resource mobilization is, so government has to spend. Okay, if I have to spend on infrastructure, I should have resources. On the other side, my debt to GDP is on a higher side. So I can't depend on debt and spend money. So I have to have clear-cut understanding of how will I raise resources. So this is what the economic survey talks about, not in this chapter, obviously. So the economic survey says how government is going to raise resources, how private player, this is all about deregulation with respect to raising capital. Suppose angel tax has been removed. So because of which the foreign startups, Indian startups can easily invest in Indian startups. Foreign entities can also invest, and Indian angel investors can also invest without angel tax. So what will that help? Mobilization of resources for startup. Is that okay? So private sector will get enhanced. That is how resources will develop. So what rules you are coming up with startups or maybe venture capitalists, etc. So this is how we have to think when we are looking at the survey. Is that clear? Understood, right? This is about the growth chapter. Infrastructure, we'll do it from the document straight. Okay, so we have the synopsis document because infrastructure is different sectors like road. So whenever we talk about infrastructure, previous questions, if you look into the previous questions, one question is infrastructure and inclusive growth. Okay, so how will infrastructure lead to inclusive growth? That is one question. So first thing is, how will infrastructure lead to inclusiveness? How will infrastructure lead to economic growth? So this is how it is. So first of all, whenever we talk about physical infrastructure, okay, so whenever there is spending that is done by the government, this is public investment I'm talking about. So I'm talking about the capital expenditure of government into infrastructure. Okay, so if I look at the capital expenditure done by the government into infrastructure, only if there is a road, then the private player will come up with pushing in investment. This we call it as crowding in private investment. Or we use the word crowding in effect of private investment, so that will happen. So infrastructure is critical for crowding in effect, first thing. So when private player comes up with his company or invests, then there are jobs that are getting created. And when jobs get created, okay, so jobs are getting created, income is getting increased, then to some extent poverty is going to reduce. This is something like jobs and poverty can be linked to inclusive growth. Okay, because there is an ecosystem that got created. You have roads, you have industries, people have income in hand. Therefore, hospitals, schools will develop, and that is what we call it as social infrastructure. Right, so social infrastructure, or I call it as a positive externality of building a physical infrastructure. This physical infrastructure will also have a positive externality on building social infrastructure. That is how inclusive growth will come because of spending money on infrastructure. Okay, so when you create such an ecosystem altogether, if I'm spending 1,000 crores on this road, my GDP will increase by 10,000 crores, which we call it as multiplier effect. So that is how infrastructure has direct impact on economic growth as well as inclusive growth. This is a very, and if you try to understand why investments after 1991, most of the foreign FDI investments also, they were moving into services sector, which has led to over tertiarization of Indian economy. But they have not moved into our manufacturing sector because of multiple problems. Okay, so one problem for manufacturing sector is also lack of efficient infrastructure. Now the question comes up, is government alone going to spend money on infrastructure? Are we going to achieve our targets? It becomes very difficult. And that is the reason we read about public-private partnerships. So government alone cannot spend because government's resources are very much limited. And that is the reason currently we are talking about public-private partnership. I hope it is clear. So in the context of infrastructure, the economic survey also talks about 3 policies. One is the national infrastructure pipeline. So government says from 2020 to 2025, 111 lakh crores we will spend under this policy of NIP. National Infrastructure Pipeline, 111 lakh crores on building infrastructure. Government also says in this 111 lakh crores, 6 lakh crore we will raise through asset monetization or monetization of assets under the national monetization pipeline. So government is talking about these important policies. One is under NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline. Government is saying from 2020 to 2025, we are going to spend 111 lakh crore. Okay, and then in this 6 lakh crore we will raise from asset monetization. Asset monetization under the national monetization pipeline. So what does that mean? I have the existing ports, brownfield projects already there. I will monetize my brownfield to build greenfield projects. Monetize my brownfield means I'm going to give these ports on rent or on lease, these airports on lease, generate revenue, and use that revenue for building greenfield projects. So this is what is the logic. Then national logistics policy. Government also talks about this, and the economic survey again mentions. In addition to these two, we will also focus on logistics because we are bad in logistics. And our logistic cost is almost like 14% of GDP. 14 to 18% of GDP is our logistics cost. And US logistics cost is 7.5% now. Okay, so 14 to 18% on the higher side, 18% of GDP logistic cost means though you produce efficiently, because of your logistics, the product becomes costly and you'll be inefficient. Simple. So automatically you'll become inefficient. So therefore, the national logistic policy says by 2030, we will reduce our logistic cost to 8% of GDP. Then only you can do well. It's not just about building infrastructure. You just build infrastructure, spend money, that is not sufficient. Unless your logistics is efficient, so we will reach, our logistic cost will become 8%. And one more thing it says is, there is an index called as Logistics Performance Index, World Bank. Okay, so in this Logistics Performance Index, obviously our rank is very bad. So we have kept a target that at least by 2030, we will come in first 25 ranks. Okay, so this is also a target which we have kept as part of the logistics policy. Okay, logistics is okay, this is okay, everything is okay, but PM Gati Shakti, heard of this? PM Gati Shakti is also important. Why? This is a scheme of good governance. Okay, so you should not waste taxpayers' money. So before you implement, you're raising, how do you implement all this? You're using taxpayers' money, but if you're not coordinating ministries, departments, you don't coordinate and you waste money. You build the same road again and again. Okay, once you build the road, again you will say, no, optical fiber cable, drainages, push the road away, and then build this, and then again come up with road. You do it multiple number of times, then money is getting wasted. Sit together, create an umbrella platform under NIP. One umbrella, 7 growth engines, where infrastructure you will work on. Energy is the major area where NIP is going to spend. Okay, so in these 7 growth engines, create an umbrella platform, create an umbrella platform, and there you come with all these projects put at one place. All ministries, departments coordinate efficiently and then implement. So that is what is my PM Gati Shakti. So all these become important if growth has to happen, and that is what is the importance of infrastructure. I'll come to of course, I just want to show you some difficult questions where you can't put it, whether it is environment or economics, you will not understand. Okay, so this is one question like that was asked earlier. So when you're reading these topics, you also have to look for these type of questions, and that to a 15 marker 2022. Okay, so this is a UPSC previous question. Do you think India will meet 50% of its energy needs from renewable energy by 2030? Okay, so which we've talked about energy transition through China, etc. Justify your answer. How will the shift of subsidies from fossil fuels to renewables help achieve the above objective? Okay, so this is how. And then what are the challenges in shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy? So these are the questions which I will keep in mind when I'm preparing these topics. Of course, other topics which you come up, few things can be written from the topic which I've already discussed. And this, I believe this is something like a difficult question to be answered. Okay, so why? Because if you know it. You don't know, you can't write anything you feel like writing. Okay, so that is how it is. So you need some understanding to write such questions. Okay, so you need some data also. Okay, so that is how it is. So give me a second. This is Vision IAS summary of course, summary has, this is all, these are all summaries, summary of the different topics in economic survey. Okay, so what will I pick up when it comes to infrastructure? So infrastructure, every area there was discussion in the economic survey. So each area means rail, road, port, airways, every area there is a discussion. So here we can't remember everything, but at least few important points, few important data points have to be remembered. Okay, so here if you see, central focus of the government in the last 5 years was on public spending on infrastructure, physical, digital, and social infrastructure. You know what is social infra? Why? Because infrastructure is critical for growth and development. That is what I was talking about. And four policies, NIP, NLP, NMP, and PM Gati Shakti. Any infrastructure-based questions, measures taken by government, these four are compulsory. Okay, so here if I see the developments across infrastructure sector, so one is in the railway sector. Okay, so one is you have 17 new pairs of Vande Bharat trains introduced in the network. Okay, so 91 Gati Shakti multimodal cargo terminals commissioned. See, when we talk about the national logistics policy of government, it focuses on three things. One is the multimodal logistic parks, that is one. Second is warehouses. Third one is cold storage facility. So government's logistics policy primarily focuses on three things: multimodal logistic parks, warehouses, and cold storage. Then another problem in India is with respect to transportation. So economic survey also talks about transportation. It says when we talk about transportation, in India's case, our transportation is skewed with respect to road. Almost like 60% is road, or India is like a truck nation. We have neglected inland waterways, rail, etc. And Indian roads are very bad. And the efficiency with respect to logistics is also coming down because of our transportation model. So this is also one more important aspect. So one is inland waterways, rail. There should be equal share. You can't completely depend on roads for your transportation. This is a discussion that is also there. Okay. In the road sector, India has a total road network of 63 lakh kilometers, including national highway network. So if you know, there was a prelims question on infrastructure in INVITs, basically. Okay, so INVITs was a question that was asked from the last budget. Okay, last budget, there was change that was made. So with respect, what is the purpose of INVIT?
To create bonds that will finance infrastructure projects like highways and other infrastructure.
Okay, so highways, that is basically, that is National Highway Authority of India, INVIT. That is one INVIT. NHAI, INVIT is one. Okay, for building infrastructure and roads, we have come up with different models like BOT, annuity, BOT toll, hybrid annuity models, Nitin Gadkari in 2015 plus. Okay, so in spite of all that also, now infrastructure, spending money on infrastructure has become challenging. One is because private players were showing lesser interest, especially with respect to signing bigger public-private partnerships. They felt there is some trouble in signing bigger public-private partnerships. So this was also one problem. Then you know that SEBI has started popularizing real estate investment trusts on one side, and on the other side, INVITs. But INVITs are treated as borrowers under the guidelines of SARFAESI Act. Heard of SARFAESI? Okay, so SARFAESI is related to banking. Okay, so there is one road which is already operational. Toll collections are also happening. And let's say a sponsor entity has created a investment trust. Now this investment trust which you have created is like a borrower. It is going to borrow money from all of us. We can have, if you have money, we are putting money into this trust. And this money will be invested into road, that existing road. And based on the valuation of that road, some units will be allotted to you. As if like you're buying a mutual fund. Similarly, you're buying some units in that, on that road. Now this INVIT which is there, which is borrowing money, this is like a borrower, treated as a borrower under SARFAESI Act. This was the question in the UPSC prelim, that it was treated as borrower under SARFAESI. Are you able to get this? Okay, second thing is, this INVIT, when we say, in the last budget, they have made a change. This INVIT can be seen as a borrower, Whatever money we put into this InvIT, some things can be seen as you are borrowing, some things can be seen as like you are buying some equity. So for things which you are buying like an equity, you receive what? Dividends. And something like you're like treated as bonds, you receive what? Interest. So the tax on dividends was introduced only in the last budget. And that was asked that dividends and interest both will be taxed. Why was it asked? Because there was a discussion in the budget. So that means what you should understand is government is looking at new ways of funding infrastructure. So you are investing into National Highway Authority of India, you're investing into an existing road. Let's say 10,000 crores has been raised. That money will be used for buying, that money will be used for another greenfield project. Okay, you are spending money on an existing road on which units are there, you're getting some interest and dividend, but that money will be used for building a greenfield projects. Indirectly, you're buying units on a brownfield project and a brownfield project, and that money NHII was using it for building a greenfield project. So that is also an innovation with respect to building roads, etc. Are you able to get this? Okay, so for building roads, different models have been brought in PPP also, like hybrid annuity, etc., and popularizing InvITs, NHAI InvITs, etc. So this is what is the discussion. Then here you can see there are some schemes here. Bharat Mala Pariyojana, launched in 2017, it aimed to develop 34,800 kilometers of national highway. By 2024, approximately 74% of the projects have been awarded and 18,000 kilometers have been constructed. So this is some data. Okay, so this is some data with respect. Then multi-modal logistic parks. Till December 2024, 6 multi-modal logistic parks in Chennai, Indore, Nagpur, etc. Is this clear? Then civil aviation airport cargo handling capacity has been gradually increasing, reaching 8 million metric ton in financial year 2024. Ude Desh ki Aam Nagrik scheme, 619 routes have been added. So this is something like a data related to civil aviation sector. Then ports, shipping, etc. Here, there is a discussion about major ports, minor ports, etc. And landlord model with respect to ports. Okay, so where you are taking the help of the private player. Okay, so here if you see improvements in operational efficiency and reduction in average container turnaround time, etc. And progress under Sagarmala program, etc. So this is what is the focus here, you can see. And power sector current status, installed capacity rising by 7% year on year. Share of renewable energies, India's total installed capacity now stands at 47%. These are some data points from the survey. Okay, so total renewable energy installed capacity increased by 15.8 year on year, reaching 209 gigawatt. Okay, so then you have the telecommunication, IT, okay, so and rural drinking water and sanitation sector. Okay, so here if you see Jal Jeevan Mission, these are all schemes. And some schemes have to be read for prelims. Okay, so Jal Jeevan Mission, over 12 crore families have gained access to piped drinking water. And states achieved 100% coverage. These are some states and UTs which have achieved 100% coverage, etc. Then you have urban sector and tourism. Tourism here you can see you have this scheme of Prashad here to develop tourism infrastructure at identified pilgrimages, destinations, and heritage sites. These are all schemes. Okay, so some schemes have to be read, whichever has been mentioned in the budget. Okay, so specifically those schemes mentioned in the budget, you have to read. Okay, government has liberalized norms with respect to FDI in space sector. Okay, and space sector is in news. So here with respect to space, you can see the status and initiatives of the government Space Vision 2047 includes 4 projects, etc. Okay, so this chapter, what we can do is, one is for mains, we will only look at few areas like impact of infrastructure on growth and inclusive growth, etc. Second would be collection of data related to rail, road, port, civil aviation, etc. These are the things which have to be focused. Okay, so in this infrastructure chapter, you can't read and remember everything in this chapter. That is for sure. Okay, there's a lot of pages to be read. And ultimately, these are the main points which you will find. Okay, so but infrastructure, you can't leave and go to the exam because there will be some questions coming up in the exam. Is this clear? That's all then. Thank you.